think we are on. It's now a great pleasure. We've just got a set, it's no break, it's just a set change, gonna take 1 minute. And it's a great pleasure to introduce our next guests. Two of them need no introduction because they were here yesterday, Jacques Herzog and Amos Gitai. It's wonderful, Pierre de Meuron just arrived, so we have the three of them on stage. As I said yesterday, and this is a very special panel, because Jacques and Pierre, when Julia Peyton-Jones and I invited them to design the pavilion from the very beginning, in collaboration with Weiwei, who sadly cannot travel and cannot be here, and will not see the pavilion, but he is present with the quotes which are actually shown in the pavilion. And from the very beginning, the idea was to make this a memory forum, as Jacques once called, that the pavilion becomes a place where actually the memories of all the previous pavilion is. And in the very first discussion we had in Basel, we had a Skype with Weiwei, as Weiwei couldn't travel. Many of these conversations happened by Skype. Jacques and Pierre were saying that really one of the key things for the marathon for them will be to have Amos Gitai here, and that they're actually working with Amos on a film. We had yesterday two short extracts from Amos's film. This will continue today with a third extract of Free Zone, which is the film Amos did with Natalie Portman. But we will hear also about the project which Jacques and Pierre are working on with Amos. And it's wonderful because they spend a lot of time today together. And Amos told me they made huge progress for the film the three of them are going to do together. So a very warm welcome to Jacques Herzog, to Pierre de Meuron, and to Amos Gitai.
We'll show a little fragment of Free Zone. A film I did in 2005. Free Zone takes, I've just introduced the piece very briefly. It takes a story which was told to me by a guy who works as a driver. And at some point of his life, he was unemployed. He comes from a little cooperative in Israel, and he was looking for a job and he couldn't find work. So he brought 4x4 Chevrolets from Houston. Then to his workshop in his agricultural village, he transformed them into armored vehicles. Then he crossed the border to Jordan, and with his Palestinian partner, they sold it to security companies in Iraq. And I thought that this was a very good occasion to question the validity of these furious Middle East borders, which are dissecting this region, which perpetuate hate. And I asked Marie-José to join me and to transform the three male characters to female characters. So the Israeli driver became Hannah Laszlo, who got a prize in the Cannes Festival. His Palestinian partner became the great Palestinian actress Yam Abbas. And me, the passenger, became someone much more beautiful, which is Natalie Portman. The piece you will see, it's a fragment, it's a sequence shot, because in different films that I do, I like to relate figures into space and not to dissect them like we always do when we talk about this region in all the evening news of the planet, like a kind of a Speedy Gonzales editing, but to show space, to show contradictions. I'm a collector of contradictions. So on the face of Natalie Portman that you will see, we superimposed a popular song, which is sung by a great rock singer, Israeli rock singer, Hava Alberstein, and she adapted the traditional song which is used for Passover, which is talking about the cycle of violence, about how people who are essentially persecuted become new persecutors through different animals which are eaten one by another, then by human beings, etc. I think the piece we have here is not subtitled, so you have to complement what you will not understand from the Hebrew language. And anyway, thank you.
ששתה את המים, שכיבו את האש, ששרפה את המקל, שחבט בכלב, שנשך לחתול, שטרף את הגדי שאבינו הביא. ובא מלאך המוות והרג את השוחט, ששחט את השור, ששתה את המים, שכיבו את האש, ששרפה את המקל, שחבט בכלב, שנשך לחתול, שטרף את הגדי שאבינו הביא. פיקמת שרה חד גדיה, אביב עוד לא הגיע ופסח לא בא. ומה השתנה לך, מה השתנה? אני השתניתי לי השבה. ובכל הלילות, שאלתי רק 4 קושיות. הלילה הזה יש לי עוד שאלה, עד מתי יימשך מעגל האימה? שאלה, עד מתי יימשך מעגל האימה? רודף ונרדף, מכה ומוכה, מתי ייגמר הטירוף הזה? מה השתנה לך, מה השתנה? אני השתניתי לי השנה. הייתי פעם כבש וקדיש הלב, היום אני נמר וזאב טורף. הייתי כבר יונה והייתי צבי, היום איני יודעת מי אני. וזבינה בבזריזות, חד גדיה, חד גדיה, ענבי נוגדי בשני סוסים, שוב מתחילים להתחלה.
so much. And maybe before we start this conversation between the three of you, Amos, it would be great that you tell us a little bit about that third fragment, because yesterday we saw two fragments, and today it's your fragment with Natalie Portman. And I found this wonderful quote where you said, I think the world today is a kind of composite environment. Every one of us has ancestors who come from one place and live somewhere else. Cultural identity is kind of like a souvenir, because the reality we live in is shattered and it doesn't exist anymore. I think this is the material that we filmmakers can use, this fragment. So I was just wondering, maybe you can tell us about this third fragment.
I actually will refer to a conversation I just heard Jacques and Pierre speak about the pavilion here to make it more concrete. And Pierre was asked to interpret the pavilion, and he refused to interpret it, you know. So it's almost was a homage to the text of Susan Sontag against interpretation, you know. So I think that we have to create poetic significations and trust the spectators. The spectator will work between the tension which is created between the sound. Unfortunately, we didn't have the subtitles, but the sound or the meaning and the space and the human expression and the architecture. And because we believe in a kind of a democratic perception, we should not feed people with a spoon. You know, we should bring components which are clear in a way. The gesture should be clear. It should be in some way even subversive against some order and so on. So it should be subversive. It should have an opinion. But the space for interpretation should be given, and everyone has the right to interpret why the pavilion was made from this material. The architect or the filmmaker can give some keys, but that's it. You know. I think from some point on, it's really great if people read into the films or into the buildings significations. Sometimes they can even understand even better than the creator the significance. Because we do, the good design or the good cinema is done also by intuitive procedure, not only by didactic method. So I think that indoctrinary cinema did harm to the very causes that it wants to protect, you know. We have to trust the spectator or the visitor to complement what we did. We have to leave it open-ended. Hans-Ulrich, the reference you made is really, I think that we live in an age that everybody is deracinated in one way or another by wars, refugees, urban agglomeration. People are displaced from their original sites, and they have to find new significance. So since we are in a marathon about memory, the memory is necessary to build the future, not just sentimentally to look at the past. It can be an instrument, it can be a strong instrument, but I think that in a way, the more we speak about one humanity, one elements which unite, parameters which unite, the less we give arguments to people to make the next war. The piece we showed yesterday about Kippur is about demythicizing the war. Because to make the next war, the powers always need to create a mythology, a contemporary mythology of the war, to make it exciting. If we demythicize it, we work against these desires, and I think this is the work of the artist.
And maybe it's interesting to start also with how your dialogue between the three of you started, because when Julia and I visited you, Jacques, at UPA in Basel, it was somehow just at the beginning, I think, of these conversations, and we talked about memory, and you very early on with Weiwei came to this idea of a memory pavilion, and you said that you have these conversations with Amos, and that it leads towards a collaboration. So maybe it would be good to hear more about this, and obviously to hear if this collaboration is more a film or a building, because both is possible.
I don't know if we want to reveal it yet, because we are looking for our way, you know. But that's up to Pierre and Jacques to decide.
No, I don't. No. This is just really in the beginning, and we don't know yet what it will be. As often when we start project, whether it's an architectural project, whether it may be a film, that we don't know yet. So it would be too adventurous to step out at the moment. But talking of collaboration in general, of course you're asked how our collaboration works. This interests so many people, but I don't think this is so much important. I think collaboration as such is important. I couldn't work alone. We couldn't do what we are doing. I think it's for you the same. You couldn't do it alone. And from the beginning, we have been collaborating on a conceptual level with artists, but we are also collaborating in everyday life with all the people in our office. We are collaborating with engineers. We are collaborating with clients. So this is all collaborative work we are doing, and that's how I can just envision it, and not in another way.
And how did the dialogue start between you and Amos? How did it begin?
Like all good dialogue, with a very good dinner, which lasted, I think, 4 or 5 hours. The owner of the restaurant in Basel wanted already to close, but out of respect to his more usual clients, he was patient, you know. And we had a great and very honest conversation, I think, about architecture, about power, about politics, about the way the architects, how can he escape the control, how he can make something of his own. I think all these are, since you mentioned, you know, I myself was formed as an architect, and my father was an architect, so I'm aware of these questions. And I think that they were absolutely honest about it, and it was a great evening we had. So.
I think it's certainly, if we do something together, it's rather a film than a building, probably. But it has common sides. I think the fragment we saw was super impressive in that it's also somehow doesn't need interpretation. You would really destroy it. I think you saw this amazing face, and it reminded me more of a video work, because it was really like a sculpture, very sculptural piece. Then, Pierre, you commented this, and I think very interestingly, the window goes up and down, very architectural. Mm-hmm. The sound comes in and is, again, closing, and the sound goes away, and the sound was not just the sound, the music, but the sound was this kind of cultural information of Arabic, Christian, monuments almost. So many ingredients of what makes our lives interesting but also difficult came together. And then this music, and so it was really so much of what makes a film, you know, and makes it so rich. And at the same time, it opens doors to architecture and to so many issues that we might share or we might explore together. Just a last thing, a film about architecture is super difficult. I have perhaps not even seen one which is not kitschy or boring, or, you know, it's very difficult. So we're very modest at the beginning, and of course I'm enthusiastic at the same time that we might go somewhere interesting, but we don't know. And as architects, you're always a generalist, so you are involved in so many things, but at the end of the day, you cannot do so many things as many believe they can. But of course we try, and we try as much as we try to do such different things as a church or a museum or a private home. So you have to learn, involving yourself in so many different people and different minds and cultures, and so to collaborate with a filmmaker who has an architectural background is certainly very, very interesting for us.
And Amos, for you, is it, because obviously your father was at the Bauhaus, so, I mean, that was an early collaboration, one can say, with architecture, but is it the first time that you have that kind of dialogue with architects, or is it something
I mean, it's always in my mind because I think that I like the way you situate the figure in a space. You know? So it's not just a figure, not just a narrative, not just the argument, but space. The space is meaningful as a form of interpretation. You know? And I think that we all, the two disciplines, I think it's not a coincidence that there are some filmmakers who started as architects. Because we both start with a text, so the text is words, it's abstract. You know, the architect get a program of a building, the filmmaker have a screenplay or a concept, but this doesn't have shape. So we have to go, both disciplines have to go through the process of translating a text and to give it shape. This is really the most fragile moment, is what is the idea, what shape will we give to a school or to a film? I mean, this is similar. And then you are confronted with the fact that both are collaborative, what Jacques said before, they are collaborative arts, they are not individual arts. So if you don't know to work with people, I mean, you might as well choose something else. You have to listen to everybody and still take decisions. So it's a complicated balance. You have to motivate, you know, to inspire, and I think that, you know, I think I told you, Hans-Ulrich, what I learned from my father is that until I was 17, so meaning just a couple of years before he died, he didn't tell me about Kandinsky or Mies van der Rohe, all of this. He just took me to construction sites. And I would see the way he would speak to carpenters and to masons, and that he would explain to them in detail, and the necessity to transmit. You need to transmit. If you don't know to transmit, you can just... And I think in a film, you know, I like to work with the cinematographer, with the editor, with the actress, with the actors. You know, so all of this is a form of, is a continuous dialogue, and I think that there are a lot of common of the... so I think we are in the initial stage of trying to note what can be interesting. You know, it's a great stage because it's very open.
And it is obviously, as you say, too early to kind of reveal the details of this collaboration because it's an early stage, so it's too fragile for that. But what we could maybe talk about more is this sort of notion of memory here in the Memory Marathon. And I was also wondering, because in terms of collaboration, we should mention Weiwei, who sadly cannot be with us here because he still doesn't have his passport. And obviously, that was the sort of whole spark for this pavilion. Is we invited you and Weiwei to design the pavilion together. And maybe it would be great to hear a little bit about this collaboration you have with Weiwei and how you came to this idea of this memory forum here in Kensington Gardens.
Yeah, those are somehow like a little bit déjà vus for us, so for me, that we meet people, and this is a great luck to meet people that you can encounter in a very direct way and a very open way. So those are the fantastic moments in life, which is somehow also a serendipity, or what's how you a good luck to meet people. Of course, you know sometimes, but also it's to have the opportunity to meet someone. And it was similar with Weiwei, where we, through a common friend who brought us to China, and he said he understood that the three of us would be a good match, and he said you have to meet Weiwei, and that's what we did then in 2002, in late 2002 when we first went to China. The Weiwei came then soon to Basel, and we entered the competition for the National Stadium in Beijing, knowing that we wanted to have a collaboration with a Chinese mind. Also knowing that for us it would not be possible as Europeans or as Swiss or whatever, as people from Basel, just to enter such a challenge without having this the Chinese mind with us. And this was, as it happened, a very good match, as we were very critical with each other. Also, of course, Weiwei was very critical to what we brought up, but also we were critical with this idea. So it was more like first a conflicting or a disagreeing match, and then coming up to the solution that has been built at the end.
And it was, and we've done many more things. I mean, we have been developing things based on projects, but especially also through traveling. And I think that's always very good if you do things almost not because you've been given a program or something, a commission, but you basically like to explore things together. And we've done a lot of extensive trips in China with Weiwei. A bit like in the past, we've done this with Remy Zhao, who passed away 6 years ago, and with whom we did when we were younger and invested even more time in that unnecessary trips to France where we talked and talked and talked. And those are moments in our lives that were where we really filled up the depots, if you could say, of collaborative efforts and minds. And I think the unnecessary and the one thing that is not made on purpose is ultimately generating then the quality that is leading to something like the pavilion also. We could have done the pavilion on Skype, over Skype, if we hadn't had these 10 years that we've met before. And it's really a shame that Weiwei couldn't come and see that pavilion and that product that he was part of. And but we said when we last spoke again that we would love to go back to some way of collaboration. Even if growing older and evolving thing, people also go, lose themselves. But when we did this Skype, over Skype, this thing, we had moments where we were really, again, very close. It was actually wonderful moments that we got because we got this commission from you and Julia. And so how exactly this idea of memory or whatever came up is very difficult to trace back, but it's just a result of this kind of serendipity that Pierre was mentioning, of that meeting. And I'm sure that with Amos we can go to similar places somehow.
And Amos, can you maybe talk a little bit more about memory, because we obviously, without now interpreting the films directly, but it is a topic which is so recurrent in your work, and it's there from the very beginning, isn't it?
I just want to add something to what Jacques just said, even relating to the fragment we show, because it is also a kind of a hazard, the element of the hazard, because obviously you cannot give an order to an actress to cry, right? And to do it so convincingly, in a convincing manner. So I will situate the scene. So I wanted to do a scene of this manner. I asked to park the car in a very sacred place. So I was kind of a bit unpolite. And the car is parking on the esplanade of the Wall of Lamentation. So it's a very charged context to anyone, whatever religion. So the climate, again, it's not me. The climate is kind of drizzling, so it's kind of a bit melancholic, I would say. So these two components, the set and the climate, both elements that I don't conduct, but if we manage to capture the gifts which are given to us, then we end up with a very powerful scene. And then Natalie Portman, kind of gently, she said, "What do you want me to do?" So I said, "Cry." And she did, But I would say that if the car was not parking there, if the climate was not there, if the set mind was not very intimate, you cannot just instruct people in a hierarchical way to do it. So you need the talent of the actress, the way you place the vehicle, the circumstances, this kind of very particular alchemy produced the scene that it did, and I think that I'm working to go back to what you asked me. I'm working on memory because I think that because of the very powerful media portrayal of the Middle East, it's living a very, and the rivalry forces have understood that the media is so important in contemporary world and contemporary warfare. It's constantly being manipulated, you know. So the only thing that cinema can do is install time. Time, it's the last instrument we have. Length. Do not accept the speedy editing. Give time. So say pause. I'm not playing your game now. I'm installing a different way of looking at the ingredients that anyway we heard so many times. And even this very simple thing that you change the rhythm of perception is a very powerful way. Then again, people have to complement it. They have to apply their own memory, their own, whatever it resonates inside. I think, to go back to something John Berger said yesterday, I think that utopia, I agree with him, utopia is necessary, even if the circumstances look very pessimistic. We have to project a utopian vision because it's the only force that can change the present, even if it looks not realistic. So if we're just into the realpolitik, saying, okay, everybody wants to kill each other, they have all very good arguments, they will keep doing it, and so on. That's it, you know, we can be nihilist. If we want to avoid it, we have to inject utopian vision, even if all the circumstances go against it. So it is necessary, it is a necessary instrument, and art and cinema and architecture can project images and visions which go against the ingredients of the current reality. So when we speak about memory, it's definitely not nostalgic. And, you know, you spoke about my early film House, which I did more than 30 years ago, or Field Diary, which I did exactly 30 years ago when I filmed part of it in Beirut, which was under bombardment by the Israelis in 1982. When I did these films is in order to install the memory of the other, to say the memory of the other is legitimate. The Palestinians have memories and to the same piece of territory that we also have. And whatever is the political solution, if we don't recognize the element of the memory, we'll never resolve it, never. So we have, first of all, to respect the memory. And when we will go beyond this stage of accepting the legitimate memory of the other, then we can talk, we can find political solution, which always will have a pragmatic dimension, but we cannot avoid this stage. So also when I did these films, my first films, it's exactly the time I left architecture, I find that memory can give you a lot of, people will be very pissed, will be very unhappy that you mentioned these memories, you know, of the other. They will be furious. But, you know, in the showbiz, in the cinema, a lot of people like to be loved by everybody. I don't think it's completely necessary. You know?
I think the utopian side of memory is the key, because otherwise it's key to nostalgia. And I think the only raison d'être of memory, and in that context, is that utopians is to find a way to the future. I mean, the pavilion is a very modest contribution, but if that pavilion would just be a burial ground of past 11 years, it would be so boring. But it's certainly not. It has a provocative utopian side, which we are interested in. And otherwise, memory is like, you know, deploring an old love affair or getting out of the drawer old love letters. Nothing is more boring and more sadder than this. And so that's what I mentioned also yesterday when we talked about memory, is also kind of a dangerous term, you know, if we don't associate it. Tradition in a positive way, taken in a positive, connects memory with utopia somehow.
So you would agree with Panofsky when he says that the memory and the fragments from the past are there to invent the future as a tool. We are running out of time, so I'd like to thank you so much. Thanks to Jacques, thanks to Pierre, thanks to Amos. Thank you so much.